Haylee Marie Vintage. Today I have a really different video for y'all. This is not going to all of a sudden change into a pottery channel, so don't worry about it. But I wanted to take you guys through a trip I recently took with a bunch of my friends to go and make some Raku pottery on my friend's ranch. Raku pottery is a Japanese style of pottery that originated in the 16th century, so it's very, very old. I don't know exactly when it started being adapted in the West, but it eventually was. For a long time in Japan, it was used to make ceremonial tea sets. However, I will note Raku is actually not safe to drink out of, so don't recommend drinking out of any Raku pieces. But yeah, that's kind of the origins of it, and then it's pretty common in Western pottery these days as well, but it is of course important to acknowledge those Japanese roots to Raku. I was so excited about this trip and I got some amazing pieces out of it, so I hope you enjoy this video. And if pottery isn't your thing, I totally understand, and I will see you next video. With that, let's jump into the footage. So for this trip, we rented a Jeep, which we were very excited about, and we are just driving through the countryside. Katie's driving, Jess is riding shotgun, and we are getting very excited because we're very close. We're on the dirt roads to get out to the ranch, and once we arrive, we get right to work. We're trying to get a batch of ceramics fired tonight to be able to Raku them tomorrow, so we hopped right into making. Here we're using a slab roller, which was very exciting. We do not have the luxury of a slab roller in our backyard studio at home. I forgot how much I love slab rollers and how great they are. And slab rolling is a big part of how I make pottery. So there's a ton of different disciplines in pottery, and I have always been a hand builder, which uses slabs and forms to build pottery as opposed to throwing on the wheel. I actually have never thrown on a wheel. So the way you use a slab roller is you start at an inch and you move it down by 1/4 of an inch increments until you get your slab to 1/4 of an inch, and then you rotate the clay as you go to make sure you're not putting any patterns that could cause the clay to warp. So that is what Nikki and Katie are doing here. So typically when we work at our home studio in the backyard, we are using just a straight rolling pin, and we never get slabs this even, obviously. And then here I am using the slab I rolled and cutting out pieces to make a little box, essentially. I'm gonna have a lid and it'll have feet because I love putting feet on my pottery. It's a signature of mine. But here you can see I used this cup to cut out a circle and about the size I want. Raku pottery doesn't shrink that much. And then I am using a ruler to real quick cut out the square shape that will go around. If you've ever done packaging design, it's kind of like packaging design but with clay, where you're building 3D form out of 2D parts, essentially. I've always loved being a hand builder because the way you build, it feels kind of more engineering or design-like, which is a creative process I'm really comfortable with. I think of throwing as being a little bit more natural or like going with the flow, which is not a creative process I'm as familiar with. I like something with a lot of rigid structure, which is why for me I like hand building, is it's very much like sewing, where you kind of have a pattern you're working from and then you can create off of that pattern. And then here is Jenna, our lovely host, who is my ceramics teacher from high school, who hosted us this whole weekend. Here she is demonstrating how to throw. I've never been able to teach or help my friends learn to throw because, like I said, I'm a hand builder. I've never thrown. So here she is giving a demo so people get a better understanding of how to throw, which was really exciting because this is something I can't give my pottery group. And so it's great that they could get a throwing demo since we do have a wheel. We don't have a wheel nearly as cool as Jen's, but of course she has been a ceramic artist for years and years and years. So she's had a little bit more time to build up her studio, but she did a great job giving a demo. Cass and Nikki both threw after this. I think just Katie and I didn't have the energy to throw. A lot of people don't understand how physically demanding pottery work is. Pretty much everything you do takes a good amount of strength, but also like the work it takes to actually get something to shape on a wheel takes a lot of strength. And yeah, I think a lot of people look at potters and it looks so easy. A lot of strength and a good understanding of like balance. So the first part of the demo, that was all about centering the clay, and then now Jen is teaching us how to open it up and start to build forms, and she is throwing a cylinder. And I think this process really shows how easy and mesmerizing making pottery looks. So while Jen is doing this, it looks effortless and it looks easy, but she's putting a good amount of strength behind it. She's using her legs to center and anchor her while pushing with her hands and like using her elbow and her whole body to get the clay to shape. And I also feel like this shows why I feel more comfortable hand building, is this is just a much more fluid form of creation where you maybe have to go a little bit more with the flow, and I'm just so much more of like a rigid, I see something, I want to make it type of person, and I think throwing doesn't necessarily lend itself as easily to that as hand building does. But even though I didn't get a chance to throw, I really enjoyed seeing these demos. It just reminds me why I love community and teaching and passing on skills. I think one of the best things you can do as a community is learn something new together from somebody teaching, because it opens the door to like lots of questions. Like usually if that person's a friend, you don't see them as intimidating, which helps open the door for asking all the questions that you want. And this is why I so strongly believe in community over competition. It is so much more fun to really create and build stuff together. And here Jen is demoing how successful or not successful a throw has been. You can tell by if you cut the piece in half. Of course, then you can't use the piece if you've cut it in half, but it shows how even the structure of the walls and things should be. Nikki had the energy to give throwing a go, so she is throwing on the wheel. Nikki, I think, has thrown the most out of all of us, and it was fun to see her learn and improve her throwing skills in Colorado. We were all really tired. Everybody who came in from Seattle had been up since 2 a.m. I had gotten in a few days early, so I wasn't tired. So after we got everything built and ready for the kiln, we took a little break from pottery and we sat out. They have a beautiful screened porch with a beautiful view and lots of hummingbird feeders. I'm a real sucker for hummingbirds, so this was so enjoyable to me. They had, I think, 3 feeders out and probably at least like 5 or 6 hummingbirds, which is always a delightful experience. I absolutely loved just sitting out on the screened porch and watching the hummingbirds. I did not join everybody while they did this, but a few of them went out to forage some greens for dinner. It's always really cool to eat what you've foraged. And then here we are all sitting and hanging out on the porch and chatting, and this was just so enjoyable. It was so beautiful and peaceful out there, and I love their home. Their home is one of my favorite places. It's just beautiful. It's in a beautiful setting, and I just absolutely love it. So it was very enjoyable to just kind of sit there and talk, and I also think we don't get enough experiences anymore being friends with people from different generations than us, and there's so much you can learn from people who are older than you, just like I believe there's also so much younger people can teach older people. And so this was just a really enjoyable kind of like mix of generations, and all of us obviously are artists and creatives, and so it was just really fun to get to talk about all of that and just enjoy things. So here we are the next morning. I got to sleep out on the porch on a cot, and it was gorgeous. Because the porch is screened, you can sleep out there, and it was nice and cool. We had blankets, and Jen got out a bunch of pottery magazines that are, I think, 50s. I'd have to look at the exact date for us to look through, so we're all looking through those this morning. It was really enjoyable to see all the different ads and things in it, and also see how much pottery hasn't changed. Pottery is such an old practice, and there's a ton of different forms of practice in pottery that have lasted for hundreds and hundreds of years, and so it's really cool to see how there is a lot of innovation in pottery, but how pottery also kind of stays the same. And I think that's one of the really comforting things about pottery. It's a really cool way to connect kind of with ancestors or people of the past, because you're doing such similar processes to them. And I feel like these magazines really showcased that. And then Jen had a beautiful strawberry patch in her garden, and Jessenia and I got to go and pick some berries to eat with our breakfast. I really wish I lived somewhere where I could have more land. I can't really afford to buy a house in Seattle that has any sort of garden, and I just really enjoyed being able to harvest from a garden and get to eat them. And these were like little candies. They were such good strawberries. I so much prefer homegrown food. It always tastes a lot better than what you can find in the markets. A lot of times you can find produce that's just as good as this at farmers markets, and luckily in Seattle we have a really good farmers market network, but there is just something different about picking berries with your own hands and getting to eat them right after with your breakfast. And now we are headed back in the studio. There's a few different steps we need to do to get ready. And one of those things is stirring up the bucket glazes. This is always really enjoyable because it's a chemical process, and I just think glazing's really cool. You'll see we have this glaze. I think this one being mixed up is called mystery glaze because Jen has no idea what this glaze is, what's in it, and it's so beautiful, and it's everybody's favorite always because the mystery glaze is this gorgeous blue that gets a lot of dimension in the Raku firing process. And then Jen is just walking us through a quick demo of how to use wax resist, how to like dip the bottoms so the glaze doesn't cover the bottom or you don't have to wipe it off. After that, she is showing us how to do the dip glazing. I have done bucket glazing and dip glazes because I learned in a studio, but we don't have bucket glazes at our home studio, so this was a good thing for everybody to learn. I'll show you some more detailed videos of glazing later in this video, but here we are doing our first kiln fire, which is kind of more of a test fire. So these are quicker pieces just to start seeing what the glazes are turning out like and things like that. So here we are just filling up this first kiln load, which is very, very exciting. We're well on our way to our first Raku fire of the day. We fired this kiln, I think, 6 times. So this was quite the process. And then once the kiln was loaded, it was closed, and then Jess and Jen are just working on lighting the pilot to get the kiln ready to go. The metal you see in the background is a windshield. It was fairly windy out, and the pilot will go out if it is not protected from the wind. That is kind of everything that's going on here, and we're all getting very excited since it's our first firing, and Raku firing is truly one of the funnest things you can do. There were a couple little hiccups in getting the kiln started and going, but it did go, which was exciting. And here we are getting everything prepped and ready to unload the kiln. So these are getting fired to a temperature of 1,860 degrees. So these are hot. These are like kill you hot when you take them out of the kiln. So there is safety gear that is required. Ideally, you're wearing some sort of eyeball protection. A lot of us are wearing glasses who are involved in it. And then the other thing you're doing is ideally you're wearing cotton long sleeve garments. So if somehow something does catch on fire, it's not polyester melting into your skin. This is not like a safe process particularly, so you have to take safety precautions. Here it's getting the tongs ready, and then we're also getting the buckets filled with newspapers because essentially the way this works is you're depriving the pottery of oxygen, and so you need smoke to fill the buckets. So here, Jen is getting ready to unload the kiln. It's harder to see. Later, I will show you some night footage, but this pottery is glowing red. And the glaze is still molten on these pieces as you're moving them with these tongs, which is why you also are wearing the heat protectant gloves and, of course, closed-toed shoes. This is a dangerous process and it should be treated like such. Here Jen is, she is unloading the pieces. You can't see, I have a bucket right here that she is putting it in. You can see the smoke start to come up from the fire, and we are just getting all of the pieces in there. And here we've moved to the second bucket. You can see Jen take some pieces from the concrete. Those are pieces with crackle glazes, which needs to be left a little bit in oxygen to get that crackle effect. But otherwise, you can see these pieces are hot enough that the second you put them in the newspaper, it does catch fire. So like I said, we are working with really hot materials here that are very, very, very dangerous. It's newspaper already in there that is catching on fire. And then I am gathering a ton of newspaper to throw in the top. Again, wearing those heat-resistant gloves, and then I am putting that lid on to essentially starve the clay of oxygen and have chemical reactions do their thing. And then after letting those burn for approximately 15 to 20 minutes, we're then taking them out and dunking them in water. This is great because you can handle the pieces quickly after, but you're also looking to get the chemical reactions to stop. This is such a cool form of pottery just because you don't get to like glaze things that fast that often. And you can see these pieces are still really hot, and you can tell by the steam that comes off them when they are dunked. And again, we are moving these using tongs because they are still very, very hot. Just from them being dunked in the bucket, you can kind of see all the different glazing effects that comes off of them. And then after these have been dunked in the water, they are now cool enough to touch, so we're pulling them out with our hands and starting to see the effects. The other thing you have to do is you have to kind of scrub off all of this ash to see the final result of the pottery, but we're all pretty excited. I feel like it's a good time for a pottery break, and instead having a dog meet and greet break. Jen has all these really cute rescues, Jojo and Hazel. Jojo is this one who's saying hi right now. They are both rescues, and then Kipper is, I think he's an Airedale, if I recall correctly, and I just think he's absolutely so cute, and it's wild how tiny he was as a puppy compared to how big he is now. I absolutely adore them. Like, look at their little faces. I am a cat person at heart, but I do love dogs. I think they're so cute, and if I had a big yard like she does, I would absolutely have dogs and cats. Cute Kipper is with his like curly little face. I just love Kipper, and he's so nice, and he's such a big goof, and he likes to like walk between your legs even though you're not tall enough for him to do that. He's just absolutely a lovely dog. And then this here is Hazel. She is a sweetie, but she will steal all of your food. We watched her steal Jen's pita right off her plate. She's really cute, and I love Hazel. And then over here we're walking to, this is the alpha male of the house. This is Jojo, or Joseph Charles, when he's in trouble. You can see he's nestled in my bed. Absolutely loves the blankets. I think it's hilarious the tiny one is the one in charge. Like, he will absolutely put Kipper in his place, even though Kipper's like a gajillion times his size. But seriously, look at this goof. How is he the one in charge? I like that when he's in trouble, he gets called Joseph Charles, but when he's not in trouble, he's just Jojo. But he's so cute. And then there is Hazel and Kipper as well. And like I said, this home is just so beautiful. Well, we brought our own pieces to glaze and then made a few last night. I do also want to note that most of these pieces that we're glazing, Jen threw for us and fired before we came, so we would have plenty of pieces to experiment with. So that is why you're seeing a bunch of thrown pieces, particularly me doing thrown pieces after saying I don't throw. Those are all Jen's pieces that I just am decorating. Tests and seeing how some glazes are working out. We are now down to our serious glazing. So there's tons of different glazing techniques you can use. Here you can see Cass is kind of like swirling the glaze inside their pot. Nikki is laying it down with a brush. There's just so many different ways. I did a lot of like splatter painting this pottery round, which is not usually. So we are just getting down to some serious business, and we'll learn from every single firing we do from now on. Like I said, we will complete 6 firings today, which is insane. And we are on our second firing. It has just hit 1860 degrees, so it's all very hot, and then it is ready to open. I believe this is me opening the kiln this round, and from this angle you can really see how hot this pottery is. It is very, very hot. You can kind of see how glowy it is. You won't see how glowy it is till our night firing, like how truly glowy it is, but it is glowy. And so here we are moving them in. Also, for this process, it's important to use non-glossed paper because it will be very chemically and gross if you use glossy things. And here we were more strategic in our kiln loading in putting the white crackle glazes towards the back. Those need just a little bit more time and oxygen to have their chemical reaction. Here you can see we have the struggle of 2 pots have kissed, which basically means the molten glass is sticking to each other. We have to basically separate them out, and then we're going to have to ultimately refire these pots. As you can see, as they have cooled, it has gotten very challenging to separate them, but this is just part of when you're filling really, really full Raku firing pots. So it's not particularly shocking that this happened. It does happen a few more times, unfortunately. And then we had enough material to actually do 2 firings kind of simultaneously. So while the last batch we just took out sat in the, I don't know, little trash cans, for lack of a better term, we then reloaded the kiln with other work. You can see how hot this kiln is still, because in this like fast motion, you can actually see glazes already start to have chemical reactions. And this is still obviously super hot, which is why we're loading them with the tongs. And then while all those pieces are getting up to temperature, we are ready to take the pieces we had just finished firing out of, again, the little trash cans, for lack of a better term, buckets, I guess. So that is what we're doing here. Our water is getting more and more ashy and less clear. However, it is still good for cleaning. So here you can see I am taking grog on like an abrasive pad to start to clean off my pottery. This is how you get There's just resulting soot that happens in this process because obviously you are literally burning it in an oxygen deprived environment with lots of sooty things. So as a result, you do have to scrub some of it off, which I'm doing here. And then it's also really interesting because the glazes are still reacting while you're doing this. So you can sometimes even see glaze colors continue to shift as you're doing this cleaning process. And it's pretty cool that I'm doing this while another load is firing and almost ready to unload. And here we are ready to unload. As you can see, always a lot of heat happening in here. The shelf feels a little bit less stable here, which is kind of anxiety producing. However, it will be okay. Jess is getting used to wielding the tongs. I think this is maybe their first time unloading the kiln. Before it had just been me and Jen because both of us have experience doing it. But yeah, this is just a cool process. I don't know. I just wanted to share this with you guys because it's unique. That bowl is really heavy and it is white crackle, so it goes on the cement. So it also needs to be kind of a quick process or the glazes don't react exactly the way you might want them to. So that is what's happening here. And here we have the shelf fall, and those pieces are, you know, approximately 1800 degrees, so we absolutely cannot touch them to restabilize the shelf, but it's okay because we were ready for a break for firing anyway. Here you can see Jess try to start righting the shelf, but we decided to give up. And then here I am scrubbing this piece. This is one of my all-time favorite pieces I think I've ever made. We actually did fire one more round at this point in time, which you can see here. A lot of these are refires. You can see some of the pots that kissed earlier, and a couple of these were also pots that people didn't like how they turned out, so we're just refiring them to see if it goes better, because that is the luxury of Raku, is you can fire something multiple times in a day, which is so cool. And now we're for real taking a break. I'm not very helpful here because I am not very tall. Was helping them build the foundation of their chicken coop, which was really exciting. I'm very excited for them to get chickens, so next time I come back I can say hi to all their chickens. I think they're also getting goats, which always fun. They've had livestock before, just not right now, and so they're gonna get some more again. Here we are, we're just building the chicken coop. It's just basic chain link fences. It's just helpful to obviously have more people do this than just two, because you just have more hands to do different things with, and you can see Kipper wandering throughout. This was kind of a chaotic and fun build, but honestly, we were delighted to build this chicken coop. I feel like you take a bunch of kids who live in the city who kind of like things like chickens, and you tell us we get to pay for doing all of this pottery and staying with building a chicken coop, and we are pumped. So I can't wait to meet their chickens next time I'm out. And here is Kipper, who has found a stick essentially buried in the ground. He found a root and he is trying to dig it out and desperately pull it, and it was very cute. I love Kipper. And before we do dinner, Jen gave us a quick trimming demo, which is great. I think nobody has actually trimmed their pots. We always forget how important of a step trimming is in pottery. I find trimming, like the idea of it, since I've never done it, I find the idea very relaxing. It looks very relaxing and it just looks so cool. So I can't wait to hopefully one day get on the wheel, throw my own pieces, and learn how to trim. The way it just refines pieces is just so beautiful and so relaxing to watch. I love everything about the process of pottery. I just think it's a really, really relaxing process that gets you back in touch with the earth since you're working with basically dirt. I think it's just really rewarding. I don't often show pottery making on my channel just because it's kind of a for me thing. I wanted to document this trip and have this memory, which is why you're seeing this on my channel, but my pottery hobby is kind of just for me and my community. I've been working really hard at deconstructing like my need to be productive, and I have found pottery is a way that I use my creativity in a not necessarily productive way, but instead as a community builder. All my friends who came out with me for this trip are really close because we do pottery every week together, and we are there for each other through all the different things we're going through, and it's just really nice, and we're connecting together while putting our hands in earth essentially, and it's just a really amazing process, and I highly recommend figuring out how to use some of your creativity for community building instead of for making money. So wax resist is a huge part of pottery processes. So basically anywhere you put wax, the glaze can't go on, so it will leave that part bare. This is particularly important in Raku because it is how you get that black designs on your pieces. So here we are all doing some wax resist. I'm over here working on some tree branches. Also, I just want you to see the outfit, or see, I guess, This is how I look a lot of the time. Like, I dress vintage and I dress like kind of like nicer for filming and for work, but kind of in my day-to-day, I'm a lot more casual and like geeky looking, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but like I'm not glam all the time, I guess. And don't ever let anybody make you believe they're glam all the time, because I do not know a single vintage YouTuber who is glam all the time. And also, being glam here would be incredibly impractical. We are working around high temperatures, and so having any sort of hair product in your hair is a bad idea, as well as anything that is not like fire resistant. These pieces by Nikki are some of my favorites of the day, and I just wanted to kind of clue you in on how much time it takes. I do have this in like hyperspeed motion, but like as you can see, they're layering up this wax in these really beautiful patterns, and this takes a ton of work and a ton of time, and this is why handmade pottery is so expensive. And then Raku is specifically more expensive just because it takes a completely different set of supplies than like normal pottery does. All right, we're getting to the really cool footage here. So here you can see there's the hole in the top of the kiln. You should never look in that hole because it will just burn your entire face off. You can see how much heat is coming out. Like, that is the heat vent, and you can see how it's not like actual fire, but like it's really hot air coming out of that vent. But we are at the opening of the kiln. Look at how cool this is. It's so glowy and beautiful, and all of the pieces look amazing. And then here we're just unloading the kiln like usual, putting it in the newspaper, and the fire is just so much more vibrant. Oh, here we had another kissing incident. Oh, a three-way kissing incident. It happens. My piece turned out okay. One of those is my piece. As long as it doesn't fall, it's fine. I was not really paying attention while shooting this footage, and watching it back makes me a little nervous, but I know everything turned out okay. But you can actually visually see these pieces starting to cool off. Like, you can see them getting darker, and you can see how the ones up on the top of the shelf are literally like losing heat, and you can see how it like leaves these glowy spots on the shelf. I just think this is so cool, and I promise there is going to be even cooler footage as it gets darker. All right, we are in the official night firing. So here we are unloading those pieces that we put in first when it was still a little bit lighter out. And so we're just dousing those, of course. And then this one, we had a little problem getting the bucket off. We had kind of a chaotic firing for our first at night fire. And we have our really, really glowy night kiln unloading. I can't wait for you guys to see how cool this is. Jen has taken out the probe, which is glowing because it's so hot. You can't tell that during the day, but it is so hot. And then she is getting ready to open the kiln. All right, let's just enjoy this glow. Jen is opening this kiln. Since the last kiln unloading was a bit chaotic, she decided to just handle this one herself. I think the rest of us were just getting so tired. You can really appreciate how hot these are. For pottery to be this red and like molten, and for insulation to be this red and molten, you can really tell that this is very, very, very hot, and it is absolutely beautiful. I'm actually really glad we did not plan on staying this late, like into the night. We wanted to be out of here before dark, but we decided to get this last load in, and I'm so glad we did because this was so beautiful to see. This was absolutely stunning. Here she is getting out one of these pieces, and you're gonna see her just wave it around because it needs the oxygen to make the crackle reaction happen, and this is a white crackle glaze piece. Glaze, and the fact that it's like, glaze is essentially like glass coating the surface of ceramics. And this here is one of Cass's pieces. It's also really pretty. You can also see the impressions left by these pieces. Like this little triangle, you can see that glowy triangle, and that glowy triangle stays for a while. If you look at it, like it's there. It's there a long time. And like same with this squares one. Like especially like even once you remove the square from here, you're gonna see a glow that stays there. Which tells you how hot these pieces still are. Just a reminder, we fired these to over 1800 degrees. So this is hot enough to cremate a body in. And again, this is a dangerous process, and this is going to be my last disclaimer of like, don't do this without an expert because this can be potentially really, really dangerous if not done properly. And again, you can still see like the glowing on the kiln shelves from where those pieces are. Like look at, even though that piece wasn't like fired there, you can see it's transferred enough heat to make the shelf glow in that little square. But I just thought this was so cool and definitely worth showing. I think this process is so cool, and seeing it at night was even cooler. Before this, I'd only ever Raku fired during the day, and this is just definitely like, wow. We also smelled thoroughly like fire. By the end of the day, we smelled like campfire because there's a lot of smoke. Also, the next day, we all sounded like smokers because of how much smoke we all had basically inhaled while doing this. Here we're getting ready to do our last pull of pieces. You can see that happening. So these are, again, just getting these pieces out of these trash can bucket things and putting them in water. I know Jess is struggling. There's some kind of weird pieces in there that are hard to like maneuver with. They're definitely not easy. But again, I don't know, fire is pretty. I don't know what else to say. Like all those sparks flying everywhere. It's just really, 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 really pretty. And then here we are, we're doing our last scrub of pieces. And then I guess I will now show you the new version of the reveal, which is how all of our pottery ended up. I will take you on a tour on everyone's individual pieces in a second, but these here are all of the pieces we made. This was so fun, but we maybe overdid it a little. This is a lot of pottery. I gave 2 pieces to my parents, and I know everybody else is giving gifts. And then those orange mugs that stand out, those are actually Jen's pieces that we took that she let us have. So yeah, big haul, and I'll show them individually now. All right, and of course I have to do a good show and tell of work. So this all is my work. It's funny, everybody kind of ended up with themes. I love blue, so a lot of my pieces ended up blue, particularly blue mystery glaze, and then there was also water blue. And then these 2 are both rainbow sand. Neither really turned out exactly the way I want. The smaller pot is definitely more rainbow, but this bigger pot is not. And on the inside was that water blue again, which is a really beautiful crackle glaze, but it turned out weird this time. In the outro, I'll show you what it usually turns out like. I was super happy with all these pieces. I think I ended up glazing the most. And this one here on the end, these 2 on the end are probably my faves. And then this here is Katie. Katie overall has kind of a white and moon theme. They did this cute little triangle. And then I really liked this texture. They refired this because it was so kind of like bubbly. They got a really great reaction with the rainbow sands here, and then they got a lot of really beautiful white crackle glazes that I absolutely love. I like all of these pieces a lot, but I especially am a sucker for the rainbow sand one here. That is the one with all the rainbow effects. And then the watering can is so cute. And then this here is Nikki's. Nikki has a pretty strong black and white theme, although they do have some really good copper pieces. I absolutely love these kind of like fern theme, these pieces that are all themed together. I would absolutely steal them if I could. And then I also loved these discs. Unfortunately, the big flat shape the discs are on did break on the way back. And then these here are Jess. This first one I think is my favorite of theirs. It's a rainbow sands piece that I think turned out well. The glazing on the second one is interesting. This one unfortunately cracked, but is still gorgeous. And then I do really love their box and the like rainbowy piece next to it. And then I also do really like, so I guess I like all their pieces, which I like everybody's pieces. I just love Raku. I think Raku gives such unique and cool effects. And these are absolutely gorgeous pieces. Next is Cass. Cass, as always, is our glazing genius. Cass just has like a talent for glaze. I'm trying to show you. I used this glaze, the one that's super shiny and rainbowy, and it did not look like that for me. And there's just something about Cass that is excellent at glazing, and it doesn't make me bitter at all. But all of these pieces are glazed beautifully because that's what they do, and they have some really great planters they're gonna go home with, and I'm not jealous about their glazing at all. I had everyone select their favorite piece. This is Katie's. It is this beautiful half moon bowl. I think it's one of their first makes of the day, and that crackle glaze is stunning. This one is Jess. Jess threw this one themselves, and it is gorgeous. I love the shape, and I love the way the glaze texture like sat on this shape and is so rainbowy and beautiful. This next one is mine. This is the little box with the lid you saw me make at the very beginning in slab form, and I am delighted on how it turned out, and it's so coppery on the inside. Like it's just, this piece is amazing. I shouldn't have spent longer on mine, but I did because it's mine. This is Nikki's favorite piece. It is gorgeous. They spent so much time on this piece. I love the like coppery blue of the middle and then the leaf. And this is Cass's favorite piece. Cass threw them themselves. This is their first ever piece that they've thrown, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And of course the glaze is gorgeous because it's Cass. So yeah, these are all our favorite pieces. I am absolutely delighted with how all of our pottery turned out. All right, you have seen the footage. I hope you enjoyed it. I had so much fun spending time out of the city. It was very peaceful and beautiful out there, and we saw lots of antelope and deer, and of course the dogs. And a huge thank you to Jen for having us. We had so much fun, and I know it will be a memory a lot of us have for the rest of our lives. It was just such a good trip, and I do have my two favorite pieces here. I think both of these are absolutely stunning. Both of these obviously Jen threw, and then I decorated. I really like this splatter style that I kind of developed. I feel like I should have tried it with some other different colors besides the white and the blue, but I do think this turned out really great. Hopefully you can kind of see in there, it's pretty shiny inside. I believe the inside of this one is that mystery glaze. Maybe it's copper flash. Nope, I think it's mystery. And then this one here is mystery glaze through and through. I don't think I can get you enough light to see down in this one, but it's really beautiful. And then you can see the copper flashes with the blue where it oxidized a little bit more. Just absolutely beautiful depth to this piece, and I also really love the spiraling shape. I can't wait to put flowers in these vases. While you can't drink or use these for dishes, you can use them to put plants in. That's totally fine, so that is what I am going to do. Other than these, I'll put like flower cuttings in. I'm not much of a plant person. I'm kind of a plant killer. That basically sums up this video, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed something really different for my channel, and I will see you next video for my normal content. Bye!